Hello everyone. So in this video, we're going to be exploring the pigeon pose, also called Kapotasana. And we're going to be looking at ways that you can vary it to maybe make it more comfortable in your body, especially if you have any issues with your knee or your low back. So in case you're new to the channel, my name is Deborah Leong, and I love to teach people who are active grown-ups who want to remain active as we age. So the key actions in pigeon pose are basically, it's an asymmetrical pose, which means if I draw a line down the center of my body, the right side of my body is doing one thing, the left side is doing something else. Okay, so basically one side of my body is going to be, hip is going to be in flexion and external rotation. The back leg is going to be in pure extension, reaching back. So those are the key actions in pigeon. Okay, so now let's explore pigeon pose. I do recommend, if you have a block or a blanket, I recommend maybe grabbing one. That might be helpful to elevate the hips. But we're going to start from hands and knees position. And we want to take this one step at a time. Think of it like building blocks. We're going to try to build the pose one step at a time. Okay, so from hands and knees, I'm going to take my right leg forward. So at this point, it's really just hip flexion. Okay, so I'm not rotating the thigh out yet. I'm keeping it neutral. So the top of the thigh is pointing straight up, and the right foot is right underneath that right hip. The left leg is extending back. And I just want to get a bit of a stretch in the front of that left hip. If there's ever pain anywhere in the body, please feel free to come out. If you are feeling any tension in your low back, then you might enjoy coming forward a little bit. That's perfectly fine, okay? And you might notice by looking at the shape, it's very similar to bent knee to chest when you're lying on your back. So if you'd rather do that pose, that's fine too. It's very similar. But from here, you can either stay just like this, or you can start to rotate your right thigh externally or outward, which brings your right foot towards your left hip, towards the front of the hip, or maybe towards that hand, but do not force the issue, okay? Don't force your knee. If there's any knee pain, come out. Or retreat, go back a step. And just notice I'm going to keep my hips elevated here. I want to try to keep my hips level. And the main reason why is for low back stability, especially if you have any SI joint dysfunction or low back instability. The torquing of the low back by dropping that hip down or trying to get it to the floor might not be helpful. So elevating the hips to keep them level. You can even place a blanket rolled up underneath, right across, underneath the hips to elevate them a bit. This also takes a little bit of the intensity off of that left hip, the extended hip in the back as well. So it's a little bit easier on the knee. It's a little bit easier on that left hip. But just like before, if you like, you can come forward a bit if you need to release the low back. If you're coming up and you feel like you're torquing the low back or kind of cramming into it, just come forward a bit. Now, if it does not cause pain to your knee, this is very important, you can come forward onto your elbows. And even, I forgot my block, you could even put a block underneath your forehead and put a block here if you like to rest your head on it. Okay, so that's pigeon pose. Now let's look at some options. Also, I should say, coming out of it. Hello, Mr. Lovebug. This is Mr. Lovebug. He's my helper. So to come out, you can just come off to your side slowly and swing that back leg forward. Another way to come out of it is to remove your blanket if you had anything underneath you and just slide that leg straight back again to hands and knees. Okay, so another option, if you feel like you really want to get that hip stretch and you don't have any issues with your low back feels good, you can also do something called 90-90 sit. And this is when we're basically on the floor we're kind of onto that right hip a bit, and the right leg is forward in a 90-degree angle, approximately, it doesn't have to be exact, and the left leg is out at about a 90-degree angle. Now here, if you feel like you're falling off to the side, take that blanket again. You can raise your hips a little bit, but you might even enjoy raising the hips and the knee. So the hip and the knee are on the same line. This way you might not, hopefully, you're not getting like a twisting action in the knee. Okay, so you want to try to keep them about level. So you can either stay here with the blanket underneath you or on the floor, and then either stay upright or maybe coming forward a bit. So this is a pretty deep stretch for your hip, the outside of that right hip. Okay, so that's 90-90 sit. Now another option. It does not include the extension of the back leg. It's lying on your back, which makes it more comfortable for the low back for some people. So lying on the back, both knees bent. This is called figure 4. You could take your right foot on top of your left thigh and see if you can just feel a nice, deep external rotation in that right hip. Now you can either stay just like this, but if there's any knee pain, come out. Do not force the knee. But if you do feel good there, if you like, you could take the left leg in and clasp behind the thigh. If the arms don't quite reach, you can place a strap behind the thigh and hold the strap, okay? And breathing. So this is figure 4. So this is another nice option. So just to recap, for your options, you have figure 4, you have 90-90, and you have pigeon with the hips elevated. But do try to keep the hips level, or keep that right foot right under the hip and don't worry about external rotation at all. Okay? So I hope that you found that helpful. Feel free to join us for live Zoom classes. There's a link below if you'd like to see the current schedule. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Namaste. Say bye, Mr. Lepug. Bye. You say, no, you're my helper.